Our session, let me just properly introduce myself. My name is Nick Lakhani. I am president of this wonderful club. It's a great honor to have you here with us today. One of the key things about online presenters that I love, well, there's 65 of them actually, and all of them are members. 65 awesome members because of the quality of the people in the room that makes this room amazing to me, and that's what brings me back here and willing to serve the club, even though our normal meeting is at 7:15 p.m. Eastern time, which is actually 1/4 midnight my time, and I'm in the UK. But I'm willing to do it because it's worth it. In terms of online presenters, the key things are it's about quality, about excellence, and embodying all of the Toastmaster values that we have. And also, we'd like to have fun with it. I'd like to welcome today the person who is going to be our host, who's going to handle the panel for us and handle the Q&A as well. Please welcome our very own founding president. He actually designed our website, designed the back end for us, and does a lot of things for us. A favorite son of Florida. Please welcome the one and only David Carr.
Thank you, Nick. I put up this picture. You may have seen this when you registered. This is my home club with a member using a webcam mounted on a tripod to track the speaker and some remote participants up on the screen. This could give you the false impression that I know what I'm talking about on this subject. We did this exactly once in March when the COVID thing was starting to become big, and the next week our meeting room closed and we couldn't do it anymore. But that one time was enough to give me a sense of the issues that you can easily run into with the cameras not being in the right place, with the microphones not being set up correctly, for those remote participants to see and hear what's going on in the room. I organized this workshop because I wanted to hear from some people who know how to do this right. And I knew lots of other Toastmasters could benefit from hearing from them too. And the reason for doing it right now is as you begin to meet in person again, or plan to begin to meet in person again, you may be thinking about the members who are old or have health conditions, who may not be willing to come back to that in-person meeting space. So that's a reason to think about doing a hybrid online, offline format. You may be considering that you could expand your membership and you could allow people who are traveling on business to attend and allow people who've moved away to attend. There's a bilingual club local to me in Florida that has picked up people coming to its meetings from Central and South America. They might want to continue to do that. So lots of great positive reasons, but if you go down this road, you need to be aware of what you're getting yourself into. If you've been meeting on Zoom or a similar platform, you're going to be more prepared than if you hadn't had that experience. But hybrid is a whole different animal. You're going to need to put additional effort into making sure those who attend online and offline get to participate on a level playing field, and that everybody has a good experience. And if you can't commit to doing it right, you might want to stay 100% online until you can go 100% offline, if that's your goal. My friend Roger Fung has suggested alternating weeks of online and offline meetings. There are lots of different variations. Or maybe you decide that you like online so much that you actually want to convert to being an online club. One of the best arguments I've heard, and you're going to hear a little bit more later, for why you might want to master the hybrid format is that it is actually very common in the workplace. Now, those are not necessarily good experiences too. I've been the remote person on the line and they're drawing on the whiteboard and I can't see it. They're talking about things away from the microphone and I can't hear it. And I'm trying to get them to pay attention over here, over here. I actually spoke with a chief technology officer for an article I was researching. He used to work at Microsoft, and he said, one of the ways he dealt with being a remote participant at a meeting is he would hire an admin assistant whose job was to go to the meeting, claim a seat for him at the conference table, get his face up on the laptop and have the laptop facing the other people and be his cameraman in the room. You know, I've heard the statement having a seat at the table. That was his way of getting a seat at the table when he wasn't actually in the room. He also told me that he hoped that as a result of getting a taste of everybody being remote in the workplace, folks would do a better job of being considerate of those situations in the future. So we as Toastmasters have an opportunity to learn those skills, to master those skills, and then to bring them back to the world of work and to other organizations that we participate in. Now, for our program, we're going to ask our panel of participants to give a brief opening statement. And I've asked for table topics timing on this, so keep it relatively short. Then we're going to have up to 10 minutes of presentation just on technology issues, which are important, although they're not the whole picture. And then we'll come back, we'll talk a little bit, and we'll start working in Q&A. All right? So I'm going to start with Graham Cairns. Graham, please introduce yourself and tell us what your perspective is on this issue.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Graham Cairns. I am in District 69, which is in Australia, and I've been involved in online and hybrid Toastmasters clubs for some years. The first hybrid club that I joined was a club which was based in Arlington, in Virginia. I joined it because it allowed me the opportunity to start pathways early. And it was a really good example of what worked well and what worked badly. The problem with that was that the club hadn't actually thought about how it was going to set up the technology that's required. And we will talk about the tech shortly. But one of the things that I learned very early was that it was very easy to have an us and them attitude. We had those of us who were online and those that were in the meeting. And it was really important, and I will actually talk about this when we're talking about the tech, that we integrate the two. One of my clubs here in District 69 has been trialling hybrid for a couple of years on and off. We've got a couple of members who are overseas and it's working okay, but the venue makes it difficult. A third club, which is in formation, has been hybrid from day one, and I'll talk later about how we're getting it to work, which I suspect is what you want to know. So that's who I am, why I'm here. We'll talk about the tech later.
All right, great. Let's hear from Lois Margolin.
Thank you, David. I am in South Florida, District 47, and I was a member of Plano, Texas. Obviously, I was the remote person dialing in or zooming in for about a year and a half. And I have to tell you, my role in this whole thing is the social aspect of the hybrid. I'm not a techie, don't profess to be a techie, but I can tell you that there are some things that really worked well and some things that could have been tweaked to be just a little bit better. One of the aspects that we have to consider when you're online, as it became more even, that you had more people online that maybe matched the people that were in person, you had a community. So now you could actually see that both sides were equal and it felt more comfortable, and they paid more attention to our experience as an online member, because in the beginning I was the only one. And so the online experience wasn't quite there because, well, let's face it, I'm one of 15, so they weren't paying as much attention as what would happen on the online experience. But it can work. It's a magnificent way to meet people all over the place. And you just have to be careful on the technology as to where you place the camera and how you share information. But once you figure that out, it's a really nice platform, and you can bring people in from anywhere around the world. So I recommend it as long as you have someone who can put the technology in place. Thank you, David.
All right. Thank you, Lois. Let's hear from Bridgette. Bridgette Starmans.
Thanks, David. As I mentioned in my little pre-meeting spiel, I've been doing hybrid meetings in a corporate scenario for about 30 years. And my very first video conference experience, we were in the US. We had a counterpart in Europe, in Germany, and we told a joke. We thought it was pretty funny. We all laughed, and we're just looking at people being very stone-faced on the other side. And then we felt really awkward, so we stopped laughing. It took about a minute for the joke to cross the Atlantic. And then they started laughing. And then everybody's looking at each other being very awkward. And then they saw our stone faces because we were embarrassed that we were laughing and they weren't. And then they stopped laughing. Anyway, we've come a long way when it comes to technology. I would say on the corporate scene, we started a lot with conference calls, and I work for a global company. So it's very important that you coordinate with people in other countries, in other time zones. In the meantime, I think on a corporate level, it's a little bit more complex than what we do in Toastmasters, because in Toastmasters, we primarily use Zoom. And in a corporate level, it could be Zoom, it could be MS Teams, it could be GoToMeeting, depending on who sets up the meeting. Maybe it's an external customer and they use something else. So the keys that I have found, though, are moderation is very important. We've had scenarios where we have 2 rooms of people, 1 room of people with other people just dialing in. It's important that everybody realizes that we are all part of the same meeting. So it can't be just the offline people talking. It can't be just the online people talking. So it's very important for the moderator to make sure that everybody gets their 15 seconds of fame, so to speak. It's also important for someone to speak up. If the microphone is placed badly, you have to say, I can't hear you. And that really, A, reminds everybody that you're there, but B, then also making sure that you are actually heard and contribute. So don't just put yourself on mute and walk away just because you're remote. So I've got a couple more things to share, but I'm looking forward to the panel discussion.
All right, excellent. Let's hear from Michael Alexander.
I've worked with Southern California Edison and Southern California Gas Company for a number of years. The reality is that the offices that run the business are in Los Angeles. The legislators, who we have to be on good terms with, are in San Francisco. And occasionally we have to deal with the folks in DC. Now you talk about making sure everybody's equal. We had to make sure that the legislators who were in San Francisco didn't feel like second-class citizens, because if they did, we weren't going to get good results. So when it became possible for District 100 in Los Angeles, where I live, to get involved in a virtual or mixed world, I said, this is my bread and butter. We have to do it. And I was very much aware that we had to make sure when we did this that the people who were not in the room were on an even footing with the people who were. And the things I learned in Toastmasters mixed meetings, I could bring to the corporate world and be stronger. The number one thing which most of us don't think about and need to think about is, as far as I'm concerned, for online mixed meetings, the number one thing you need to worry about is sound. Whether it's a teleconference or a video conference or a mixed conference, if I can't hear you and if I can't understand you, I'm not in the room. And so that is a very important, that is very, very important to work through. So we think about things like lavalier mics or directional mics. And when we get to the technical stuff, I want to make sure that we remember to do that as well. This is a chance for us, no matter where we are. And right now I'm living in Los Angeles and I'm part of a club in Minnesota, brick and mortar club that isn't meeting right now. I don't want to give that up when things go back. So I want the mixed ones to continue for my purposes as well. Back to you.
Thank you, Michael. I don't think Maura is in the room, or at least I didn't see her screen name here. So I think we're ready to go to our tech presentation. Michael touched on the $1 million question, and I'm not really up on the physics of how you need to arrange microphones so that you get adequate capture of sound and you don't get feedback, you don't get other negative effects. Graham Cairns has experience in radio. He knows which end of the microphone points in which direction. And Graham's going to give us a little bit of a tutorial on some of the tech issues.
Thank you, David. Yes, indeed. Now, before I begin, I have to A, apologise for the quality of the slides you're about to see, because they were created, I gather, on a Mac, and B, say that I didn't actually create these, Moira did, but because she's not here, I'm going to present her slides. But it covers what we're talking about anyway. I'm trusting that you can see the picture of the microphones on the screen at the moment. Yep. All right.
It's starting.
Yeah, you can't read the text at the top, unfortunately, as I say. Now, the most important thing Moira suggests, and I would have to agree, and Michael just spoke about this, is the microphone, the audio quality of the meeting. You see, one of the big problems with hybrid meetings is that people online can hear other people online because we have microphones in our laptops or whatever device we're using. And people in the room can hear people in the room because they are in the room. But people who are in the room all too often can't hear the people who are online. But even more importantly, people online cannot hear the people who are in the room. So you need to have good microphones. The suggestion which Moira is making here is that you look at some form of clip-on or Lavalier mic. I'm not sure that you need to go to that level, and I'll talk about a cheaper option, but you do need to seriously consider having a microphone for every person in the room. You can use a handheld microphone and pass it around the room, or the cheaper option is have everybody who's going to speak move to the front of the room where you have set up the camera and microphone. So no more having people sitting around the room and doing the walk around the room. You actually need to have people in the room with you. So that's one possibility. Let's move on, I hope, to my next slide. And that is where Moira suggests the second thing that you need is a webcam. Now, you can get away with using a laptop if you have to, but quite frankly, the camera and microphone in your laptop is great for people who are sitting a metre in front of the microphone and camera, but they're not so good for a wider room. And so that's why we suggest getting a webcam or some other form of camera. Now, a C920 is the standard. It's the one that most of us use, or something similar, and you can pick them up for around about $150 or less Australian, so probably $100 US, £85 in the UK, I gather. Look for a separate camera, because that allows you, amongst other things, to turn the camera around and see other people. Get some form of external speaker. It can be a Bluetooth speaker, or it can be a set of plug-in speakers for your laptop. But you need speakers so that people in the room can hear those people who are online. Wired speakers are a much cheaper option, and you can, as I say, literally plug them into your laptop so that people can hear it. You need a phone mount if you're going to be using a mobile phone as your camera, and a ball head for your tripods. Light stands work, or you can buy a cheap camera stand, a cheap microphone stand from your local audio store. This is a suggested setup, and I'm hoping that you can make sense of this. A projection of some sort for the people who are online, which is off beside but not behind the lectern in the in-room circumstance. So you'll have a speaker at the lectern, and off to the side will be either a projected screen, or if you want to go the cheap option, a 32-inch television, which you can pick up for under a couple of $100 at your local Best Buys or equivalent. So that gives you an option. You can plug your laptop into that, and whilst it's not as good as a big screen TV or a projector screen, at least it's roughly the size of a human head, which means that people in the room can see the individual speakers. They also have built-in speakers, so that might avoid having to have the external speakers for your laptop. But, so some form of projector screen or TV beside the speaker, a webcam A webcam covering the audience is another nice thing to have, but most importantly, you need to have a camera which is pointing at the speaker in the room and a microphone. The laptop is connected to Zoom with audio enabled, unless you're using Bluetooth speakers connected to your phone. The Bluetooth speaker is a really good idea elsewhere in the room so that people who are at the back can actually hear. Those are some of the things that you need to look at. So that's the high-tech solution. The low-tech solution, if you've only got 8 people in the room, and quite frankly, if you've got a Toastmasters club of perhaps 18 members and half of them are online, you're only going to have 8 or 10 people in the room, then you can get away with just a laptop and a webcam. Don't need a separate microphone, but what you do need to do is make sure that everybody is speaking from the point where the camera is aimed. So that means people have to get up and go to the front of the room. That, I believe, is actually, no, I've got a couple more minutes. So let me talk about some of the other things that you need to do in terms of avoiding feedback and audio issues. With your laptop in the room, that controls the audio which is going out to people who are zooming in. And so you need to turn on and off the microphone the same way that you would in a Zoom meeting if you were at home. When there are speakers who are zooming in, you need to turn off the microphone on the laptop in the room. That avoids that feedback. But when there is a speaker in the room, you need to turn on the microphone in the room and probably then turn off other ancillary speakers. Basically, it's a balancing act. And during the discussion later, I'm quite sure I heard somebody say before that they had a meeting which was a train wreck, and I suspect that audio may well have been part of the issue. We'll find out about that a little later. I have to tell you, the audio is the biggest single issue that you will face technically with a club. Oh, one thing I didn't mention, you need to have an internet connection. Don't assume that the venue that you have is going to have a decent internet connection. The clubs that I belong to here in District 69 all meet in Brisbane City Council libraries, which have built-in Wi-Fi, but that doesn't always work. So bear that in mind, and if necessary, invest in a wireless dongle, the cell phone data dongle that you can buy from your local phone company, because you're going to need a connection. You can hotspot from your phone, you can buy a wireless cell data dongle, but you need to have some form of connection. And that's now at the time that the tech bit is supposed to finish, so I will wrap here and we will discuss this in more detail if you have questions a little later.
Actually, Graham, one question. What are the concerns about having multiple microphones live? If a bunch of people have their laptops open and the sound turned on, the microphones turned on, what kind of problems can that cause? Or, you know, it also occurs to me that you might want to have more than one microphone in the room that's live, but I don't, what are the considerations for that?
Okay. In general terms, I would suggest that if there are multiple people in the room with a Zoom connection, most people should have their microphones turned off, because otherwise you are going to get feedback, you are going to get delay between the various connections. One of my clubs, we actually have an external microphone which sits in the middle of the room. Now, you can use a phone teleconference microphone, or I actually have a Yeti Pro Zoom, which is a unidirectional microphone. It sits in the middle of the room, and that is the only microphone that we use. But you will notice when things go wrong, you will start to get that echo effect, and basically that just means people need to turn off their microphones if they're in the room.
All right. So we're going to segue into our panel discussion section. I want to try and make sure that we don't go past about 2:40 in my local time zone before we start working in questions from the audience. But I did want to ask Nick to give us a couple of minutes because he's a little bit of a skeptic on the idea that this is something that every club needs to learn how to do, or that most clubs need how to do. Nick, can you give me a little bit of your take?
Thank you, David. I'm not a skeptic. Technology built my house that I'm sitting in right now. I love technology, but let's get real. It's got to be done right. Graham and other members have already mentioned. Commit to it and have a good go at it. Don't go half-baked into something. Don't go into it because the club next door has gone into it. Think about it from two perspectives. First is the actual club. It's really important as a club right now, during this pandemic, that you should be growing, or you should be looking to grow, because you have access to many, many more people than you have ever done before. And you're meeting the smoothness of your meeting, the flow, all of those kind of things, the energy in the room should be really getting really well. If it's not, and if you do the hybrid badly, and maybe you're struggling with the full online already as well, that is going to hurt you as a club. The second period people it hurts is your members. If they're not having a good time at the moment with the online aspect, or maybe if you go to hybrid, some of your members may not be able to go there. To be honest with you, I don't fall in any risk category, but there's no way I'm going to my bricks and mortar club for a long time. What that means is that some people, through health reasons, may not go to their club. What do they do when you have your physical meeting? Do you do hybrid and maybe trip up and, maybe it doesn't work for the people in the room and it may not work for the people dialing in? What about doing it this way? What I talk about a lot is technical leadership, meaning leadership, but of technical matters. You don't have to be a technical person to do that. You just have to have the cojones to actually go and lead your club. In terms of what you can do, well, you could, in theory, if you're not fully committing to hybrid, make it, as David mentioned and Roger has mentioned previously, 1 week on site, 1 week online. But the week that you're on site and some of your members cannot attend, get the division or the area that you're in to actually group people together and create this community that they can join another club and feel as though they're welcome, have something in common with other people, and have a good time themselves, even though they're missing their club meeting. And the following week, you've got more to talk about with your club mates. That's the key. It's the people who are the members, and also the club itself are the two most important entities in this case. And without those two people being happy or growing, Toastmasters struggles. Back to you, David.
All right. Anybody want to argue with Nick? Or you have something you want to tee off on, something somebody else said? Bridgette.
Yeah. I totally agree that we're in Toastmasters not to have a painful experience. That being said, I think two things. To respond to two things. One is we keep talking about microphones to make sure that the remote people can hear us. We need to make sure that we can also hear them. Otherwise, they are just viewers. So we need to also take into consideration when they speak, how can we hear them and not over just a small laptop. It may not be powerful enough to do that. But I think we talk a lot about technology, but I think it has to be the willingness of people to try and to realize it's not going to be perfect the first time. If there's anything that I realized in the corporate environment, you have to do it. Well, we have to do it, but it's a choice for a Toastmasters club. But then you need to realize that the first meeting might not be perfect, and you need to be able to have a sense of humor and laugh about it. So we're going to try our best, and there are going to be some tweaks along the way, and just make sure everybody knows that, because if we're going to, we're all striving for perfection in Toastmasters, but there are some learnings along the way. So it's important to consider all these things, but it's also important that we realize that sometimes there might be a couple of bumps that we need to fix, and that's okay.
All right. Any other panelists want to respond to other panelists or elaborate on something you heard?
David, this is Lois. So
Go ahead,
one
Lois.
thing I agree is that there are going to be bumps along the way, but if you're going to do it, you have to commit to it. You can't do it halfway. You have to say, we are going to make this work, because I know it took about 6 meetings before everybody was comfortable with it. And sometimes it's not talking about the people that are online, because for us, it's like, yeah, just move that camera. Can you give me some more sound? It's more uncomfortable for the people that are in the actual physical meeting, because they have to accommodate for us more. So as they were more comfortable with it and they learned who we are, because that became the social aspect. Who is this person that's online? They don't live in my town. Once we started knowing each other and we were accepted into the culture and so forth, people were willing to give more and sit closer, and we actually made name tags. So they made big name tags so I could see everybody's name, because maybe I couldn't see their face. But they turned all the name tags around so I could see them. What I'm trying to get at is, if you're going to do it, make the commitment and do it right. I agree with that. But don't give up after 1 or 2 sessions going, oh, this is too hard. Make the commitment and stick with it. Thank you.
All right, excellent.
I'd like to make a comment on the whole myth of perfect meetings. In my mind, the key to a good Toastmasters experience, a good life experience, is that learning is a process. And you shouldn't go in saying, is the meeting ready yet? It's a, how do I learn? How do we learn how to do that? So it's not 6 meetings of fumbling. It's 6 meetings of learning the process. And that's, I think, a very important difference in the way we approach it. I'd also like to suggest to Nick, to both agree and disagree, that there should be, I've always felt, different clubs for different people. There are some clubs which cater to engineers, some clubs cater to lawyers, some clubs cater to people who like to do things exactly right, some things cater to people who like variations. And there's no shame in the fact that an individual club does what it does right. Some clubs should, as Nick suggests, not be mixed clubs, and some clubs should offer that. And there's no, we have to be everything to everybody. So I both agree and disagree on that score.
All right. Thanks for equivocating, Michael. How about the topic of money? Because if you looked at that shopping list, if you get the lavalier mic and you get the webcam, and you know, part of the argument is maybe the club should purchase those things rather than having it be an individual member's property, and when they don't show up, you don't have the equipment. But that's a shopping list that's going to run maybe $500, $600 US. So is that money that needs to be spent? And Graham, you said that maybe we don't need to go to that extent, but you know, what's the argument for spending some money or not? Anybody else wants to weigh in on that?
The argument for spending money is the same argument that all of us have with our household budgets. You get what you pay for. Yeah. But there are alternatives to spending $1 squillion. You can conceivably do this with a couple of mobile phones and a television, but I wouldn't suggest it. Frankly, my suggestion is that for those clubs who are going to go into trialing hybrid, and I have 2 of my clubs, for example, that are about to go back to face-to-face, but only half the members are going to be there. For those clubs, I am suggesting that we use the equipment which members currently own, get it working, and then look at the club purchasing equipment to replace the personal equipment of members. So on Wednesday night, for example, I have a meeting. I will be taking my laptop, my camera, my microphone, and my projector, because the venue that we're going to doesn't even have a projection facility. But assuming that the club decides that, yes, it wants to continue as a hybrid club, and I hope it will, because at least half a dozen of our members don't come from our city, then the club will look at levying fees on members to start purchasing equipment to replace mine, so that the club will then have a projector, the club will then have a microphone, the club will then have eventually a laptop. But so my suggestion is start out using what you have available and then look at buying equipment as you decide to continue. Does that make sense? I wouldn't suggest that any club go out and spend $1,000 tomorrow and then decide in 6 weeks, we really don't like this, we're just going to go back to face-to-face.
David, can I chip in here? I go along with everything that Graham has said there. It is a lot of money to lay out, but I would say this one thing: do it in priority. And the biggest priority is sound. You can have good, beautiful vision and crap sound, and it's a horrible experience. You can have crap vision and good sound, and you can get away with it. So do concentrate on getting good sound, and that does mean a decent microphone.
Okay.
If you have a decent microphone and a smartphone at the back of the room, you can get away with it. But
can I say something here?
Before you do, can I just ask for a follow-up? On the lavalier microphone, we used to use one in my club, not for online meetings, but just for trying to get a better video recording. And I did find it to be a little bit of a hassle for just logistically for one person to hand that off to the next. I remember somebody had it fall out of his pocket, or he had it clipped to his belt or something, and it fell on the ground in the middle of his speech. Any ideas on how to keep that smooth?
As a lavalier microphone, I would not recommend it. What I do recommend is something like this Rode Wireless Go, which is the microphone in itself, and that clips easily to the clothing, like so. You can very easily transfer that from one person to another.
Okay, so that's the entire unit. It doesn't have a microphone coming out of it. No.
You can plug a microphone into it if you want to, but you don't have to. And the microphone on this is good enough.
All right. Somebody was trying to ask a question or make a point just a moment ago.
Before we do that, David, Moira, can you post that in the chat exactly what that is, so those that are questioning it?
If anybody wants, I can share my slides, which I'm not sure how much of them Graham showed.
Yeah, I showed them before.
And I did post in the chat a link to Amazon for that specific microphone.
Okay, what I do have is a webpage with all this information up there. So if you bear with me, I shall get the link and I'll put that in the chat.
I see Kate McClure is asking what a lavalier microphone is. It's the kind of thing that clips to your clothing. And Moira is suggesting one that is basically an all-in-one unit.
Can I make a philosophical...
That's a lavalier microphone.
Yeah. Can I make a philosophical point here? Something that David said, you had an issue with somebody where a microphone fell out and all that sort of thing. Part of what we should be doing as Toastmasters clubs is training our members in how to use what is required. If you're going to be speaking beyond the club level at an area, division or district conference, you are going to be mic'd and you need to know how to use that equipment. So one of the things that I like to encourage in my brick and mortar clubs is getting people to learn how to use a handheld mic, getting people to learn how to use a clip-on mic. I love the Rode Go that Moira is mentioning, and the fact that they are an Australian company, I think it makes me even prouder. But they aren't cheap. So what I'm suggesting is look at the miking, because miking is important, but bear in mind that what we should be doing is training our members in what they are going to be using in the real world.
Can I just add that I think in a COVID world, sharing microphones might be an issue.
Can I just go back to hybrid meetings for a second? Could I suggest that the committees, instead of coming together online like this, do half and half and get a feel for it before they go to their members, and that way you're going to get some bugs, but you're going to find out what they are.
Okay.
And
So you're saying the leadership team should try doing it on a small scale?
Your committees or your leadership teams, yeah.
So
That was what I was
suggestion.
trying to say.
We'll ask you to, folks, we're going to ask you to post questions in the chat, and we have chat monitors who are going to be relaying them to us. You can, once we get to your question, if you want to unmic and unmute and elaborate on it, that's great. It's just with a lot of people on the line, it becomes difficult to manage. Lois, do we have some questions that we should get to?
We do indeed. Let's start with this one. Gino had asked, how effective would Apple AirPods be for sound? Moira or Graham?
Well, only that one person would hear them.
Yeah. Yeah, the issues with Apple AirPods is only the person with them in their ears is going to hear, and using the Apple AirPod microphones, as in any wireless microphone, becomes problematic if you've got more than one person who wants to speak, because I don't want to shove somebody else's earpods into my ears.
I think they're thinking, if I was to use AirPods right now and I'm talking, is that better than using a Blue Yeti?
No, because any form of wireless, AirPods. We'll use AirPods as a generic. Any form of is meant to be used for mobile phone discussions rather than for full-on communication like a speech.
Yeah.
Thank you. The question is, will the slides that you presented, and I think Moira had a help with, be available after the recording?
I'm happy to make the slides available. I will print a PDF of them. Unfortunately, they won't come out perfectly because I set them up to have pretty displays, but you'll get the idea.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jackie Kessler asked if you could please repeat the standard for the camera.
The standard for the camera is to get a decent webcam at one end of the room and a simple iPhone or mobile phone at the other end. David, if you let me share my screen, I can actually show you, go back to that last image.
All right, go ahead.
On my slides, except I've got to...
While you're setting that up, the question may have been, what was the standard in terms of cameras? The Logitech 920E is the one that I think most clubs and most members are using. But
it's the best. It's the best value, I think. You can get cheaper. There's no problem with cheaper ones, but you will get a cheaper result. That's the only thing. And the key thing to me is that I said earlier on, you want to get good sound. The best is going to be if you have, if you're in a hotel and they have a smart TV, you connect to the smart TV. That means sound cancellation works. You're not going to get any of the feedback issues, and the whole audience can see. If you don't have that, the next best is to have a plug-in speaker plugged into the laptop. Again, you're going to get auto noise cancellation. If you have neither of those, then a Bluetooth speaker is okay, but it has to be well away from the front of the room. Otherwise, you will get, so where I put it here, it's in the middle of the audience. Obviously, you want the audience to be able to hear, but you probably need to get it further away from that.
Okay. Let's keep going because I got a lot of questions here. Maybe our timer can kind of keep us going as far as how long we're on each one.
Can I just make a quick comment while I look at this particular setup here? One of the things which is common in business meetings, and it's important, I think, even in a Toastmasters, is to let the speaker also be able to see the remote attendees. So a small monitor, the laptop is fine, where the speaker can see the virtual attendees is a good idea as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree totally.
All right, I'm going to keep going. From Helen Kelly, how can we ensure we have the correct technology available to ensure hybrid meetings are successful? I'm going to say test it out in advance, but is there someone specific they can reach out to? David, are you going to put the list of panelists available when you send out Moira's slides?
Right, we will be sending out as much follow-up material as we can gather together. We're going to try and publish something after this, so that you, because one of the reasons I organized this in the first place is I was looking around for some document that laid out how to do this, and it didn't exist. We're going to bring it into existence.
All right, so here's an interesting question from Zukifree. There has been many discussions about tech. Can you talk a bit about the logistics and the personnel of this in-person meeting? I'm hearing we need one moderator and some to help moving the mics around. Not feasible to mic everyone up. Graham?
The short version to this is that you can't ask your Sergeant-at-Arms to do everything, but your Sergeant-at-Arms will be doing part of this. What I suggest is that in every hybrid meeting, there be a role, an agenda role of the Zoom master, the tech person, the person who actually switches between online and in room. Now, that can be somebody who is tech savvy and who wants to do it at every meeting, but of course that means that they're not going to have an opportunity to do other stuff. So I actually suggest rotating that role so that you build a team of people who know how to do this. Yes, right. You need a couple of people. The short answer to the question, you need the Sergeant-at-Arms and you need a tech person. Now that can be a different tech person at each meeting, and I think it should be, but build a team of tech-savvy people.
And I think we're also getting a Zoom master, maybe have a role called a Zoom master or
be safe.
Zoominator. All right, from Jackie Kessler. Something that would be very helpful is a master checklist of all the equipment a club would need to make hybrid meetings work. Not necessarily the brand, but just a list of everything that you think we need. We have a tech question. We have a large club, 70 members. Average in person is 40 to 50 people in attendance. Could you give an opinion about the number of cameras required and also the lighting? Graham?
I can actually take the lighting piece of that. I actually used to produce a cable access show for Toastmasters. And I would say a couple of things about lighting. Depending on where you are, overhead or coming from the front is probably the best. We don't need to start buying spotlights, but make sure that all the lighting is not behind you, because otherwise you end up looking like a silhouette. And you won't be able to see faces, you'll just be able to see the outline. I mean, from a professional standpoint, there's usually one from the front and kind of from underneath the side coming up to make sure that any shadows that you have are quote unquote appropriate. But I would say a lot of conference rooms have overhead lighting. Just make sure that you don't get shadows from things that are already in the room. So if you're borrowing a space and you've got, kind of structural supports, and they sometimes throw shadows. So be aware of that also. I would say usually the stage where somebody is speaking, the speaking area is usually fairly well lit. But if you're going to invest in any lights, make it come from the front.
Okay.
I'd agree with that totally. So far as the visuals are concerned for the audience, Zoom will only normally display 25 people on a page. So if you have more than 25 online attendees, some people are not going to get seen. I guess all you can do is to flick between screens, whoever is looking after your laptop.
And the recommendation seems to be that there should be at least 2 cameras. One facing towards the speaker, one facing towards the audience. I've heard that from several different people.
Yes, I go along with that, and that's certainly in my layout as well. Okay, and those 2 cameras, of course, are going to be available on the screen. So long as they're still on the front page, you're going to see.
And I know one thing we didn't consider when I did my one hybrid meeting was how we were going to display the timing lights, because we were still set up to have an electric light in the room for that, which was not.
If I may, this is actually one of the things that you do with the second camera. As I say, you have one camera pointing at the lectern or at the speaking area. The other points at the audience and should be able to see the timing light as part of that. I mean, I know of a club that has a separate camera just for the timing light. But that's
okay.
Basically, so somebody turns their mobile phone on and just plugs it in. You know,
better go back to Lois for questions.
Thank you. This one is actually for Carol Perhinsky, our international director.
Uh-oh.
To go to a hybrid meeting or club, does the executive board have to make the decision, or should it be a motion voted on? If Carol's here, if not,
I am. This is Carol. I think what the person's asking for is regarding their own club, and they're deciding, should we be a hybrid club? And I'd like you to repeat the question again. I want to make sure I get it.
Does the executive board make the decision to go hybrid, or does it need to be a motion and voted on?
It needs to be a motion and voted on. This is affecting all members. It cannot be an executive decision. And also, it's expensive, as we were just talking about. And for spending club money, that also should be a member decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. There is a question, how roles should be distributed? Can online take any role as timer or Toastmaster of the evening?
What version of that is yes.
Yeah,
any role can be done by anybody. And in fact, there are some roles which are better suited to those online, including timer, because the timekeeper who is online can use as we've seen here tonight, Jim using the colours behind them, so that works really well. Having said that, it is difficult for some roles to be coordinated, like the Toastmaster, but I like it when the Toastmaster is online. I like it when the General Evaluator is online, because something that we've spoken about a couple of times, it is really important that we don't have a them and us. Everybody should be part of the club. Everybody should be part of the meeting, whether they're being delivered via Zoom or via Room shouldn't matter.
Absolutely, and I will say, I think some of my favorite meetings were when I was in the room on camera in the hybrid, and we had somebody else that was actually the Toastmaster of the day. You also had to practice that active listening that we hear so much about, because they had to pay more attention to the person online, and it gave more validity to this hybrid scenario. So I would recommend that the roles be shaken up. And remember, the people that are online have paid for their membership, so they have just as much a right to be a general evaluator, to be a speaker, be an evaluator, whatever role is out there. So no, you don't stop what roles people would have. Okay, so here's one again for Carol. If the club votes to hold hybrid meetings, do they need to change their bylaws?
Yes.
Okay.
Next question.
We're gonna keep going because that was nice and simple.
I've got a question about that though, because every time a club changes their venue, they don't necessarily change their bylaws.
We're not talking about venue. We're talking about the type of club. And there are three main forms of clubs: in person, or what we're calling terrestrial, hybrid, and 100% online. This club is an example of the 100% online undistricted clubs. So those need to be part of the club constitution or bylaws.
Thank you. From Wendy's iPad, can you please, and this is for anyone from the panel, specify what the Sergeant at Arms would do if they are not tech savvy at all?
Hand it over to somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's the best answer. All right, from Donna Sobel, what about closed caption for those who have hearing impairment? And I do know you can do that in Zoom, that you can have the closed caption on, but Michael, you want to handle that?
Yeah, actually, Google Meetings provides that automatically. And so I recommend that you not consider yourself limited to Zoom, even though it's the most common platform.
And
I'm also using it in PowerPoint as well. PowerPoint has closed caption option right now. Thank you.
Yes.
In multiple languages.
Yes. If you use Zoom, though, you have to set it up in your, I believe it's advanced settings, and then you can turn on the closed caption. So how do you join other clubs in other country or states? David.
Yes. You're asking me? I haven't done it, so why are you asking me?
Well, because you're a PR person and you get people to join our club.
Well, all right. My theory behind how an online club promotes itself is that it's about branding, whereas usually with a brick and mortar club, it's are they within driving distance and do they meet at a convenient time? The time of day is still important for an online club, but for example, we tried to establish ourselves as having the brand for being the place you come to learn how to give webinars and lead professional online meetings. And, you know, we try and make that part of our mission.
I mean, I joined Online Presenters, and I'm not based on the East Coast. I'm based on the West Coast. And we have members like Nick, you know, across countries. I mean, I don't think there's a limitation. I mean, if a club supports online participation, then you can join.
Right. And as I mentioned, I think David Jess is here from the Broward Bilingual Club. I don't know if Steve Harwood made it, but
I'm here.
They picked up folks from Central and South America. I don't know whether they're members yet or they're coming to your meetings, but that shows how these connections can branch out. David, do you want to tell us?
Canadians. We picked up 2 Canadians as members.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I got the story wrong. Sorry.
We're working on the South Americans. We're not sure how that's going to work.
And in the chat box is a bunch of other areas that you can go to, especially Toastmasters.org. You can find your online clubs through there. Nick?
Hi, this idea of people coming to visit your clubs, as I said in my couple of minutes I had earlier on, it's up to you as a club to go and market yourself, and you have a great opportunity at the moment. One of the clubs that I mentor in Manchester has got a member in Jamaica. Another club that was in my area in Liverpool has a member from Angola. So, you know, anything's possible right now. You need to go and attract people, and the way to do that is to go and go to other meetings, be interested, not interesting, build up a rapport, and then invite people back to your club. That's one really easy, effective way of doing it.
There you go.
If I may, Carol,
D20.
One of my clubs has a regular guest from Davis, California, of all places. This is in Brisbane, but because of the timing, it works perfectly for her. We expect that she may, in fact, end up joining us when we go officially hybrid rather than being just online as we are. That club will also have some of its members who no longer live in Brisbane, one of whom lives and works in China. He will be rejoining us as an online member when we go formally hybrid. Another one of my clubs in District 69 has been designed from the ground up to appeal to the entire district. Now, when I say the entire district, for those of you who've got a district that only covers 25 miles, you might not understand. We have a district which covers more than 1,000 miles from north to south and 800 miles east to west. It is a huge district, and our club has been designed as a leadership club for everybody in that district. So we'll have people from 2 states and 3 countries as members of the club.
Okay. We're coming to the top of the hour. We promised to try and cram as much as we could into the hour. I think a few of the folks will be able to stay on a little bit longer for a discussion in the hallway.
David, I have a very quick question for our international director, Carol. Are Toastmasters International likely to change what they actually define as a club, as a terrestrial club, to which is at the moment more than 50% in person? Are they going to be?
That is not up for discussion, Nick. As a board member, I'm not allowed to share things at all until it becomes public knowledge. So I can't even tell you if we're talking about it.
Oh, it's okay. Nobody's watching. Nobody's listening. It's only you and me.
Nick, I love you, but no.
It occurred to me that Carol was giving us the official answer, and my answer would be you should experiment and see what works for your club. And I would hope that Toastmasters International headquarters is eventually going to give clubs some leeway to do what's right for them, their clubs, and for their members. I'm sure Carol's would endorse that in theory.
David, we had a conversation yesterday. If 5,000 clubs decided to go 25% in person and still wanted to be districted, I don't think Toastmasters International would have a problem with that. Do you?
Yeah, but then it impacts on integrity and respect, and but yeah, particularly integrity. Look, I'm hoping that the board decides, hey, look, we've opened the floodgates. Let's just leave them now, and we'll discuss this later. And later can get further and further and further away.
Every member has a voice internationally, and if you have a specific vision in mind, you've got a couple of choices. One is you could write a letter and get that off to World Headquarters so that they can receive it and hear your message. The other is you can run for International Director, assuming you have the prerequisites, to make the change. Now, we're not in charge. Each member of the board is not in charge of actually making the change, but we have a voice. And then you could have a voice at the board table. But I hear you. I'm not allowed to respond, but I hear you. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to our president, Nick Lahani. Thank you so much for today's messages.
Thank you. David, do we, before I close the meeting, do you have any last words to say apart from to thank all our panelists and attendees?
Thank you to all our panelists and attendees. Why don't you wrap it up, Nick? Officially, I think we discussed we were actually going to leave the recording running for a little while in case something fun happens over the next few minutes.
Yes, once I close the meeting, we still are live on Facebook. We are still going to be recording in the room. If I can just say that one of the things that today has been fantastic meeting, lots of chat, lots of discussion, and clearly people are interested. In terms of online presenters, what we've done over the last 4 or 5 months is to go out into our districts and even plug into Toastmasters International to help them get across this O word, the online word. Before that, there was very little need for it from that side of things. But what we've done in this club is to go out and be made believers out of people that it can be done online, that we can run contests, that we can run our TLIs. And now we will, again, lead the way as to say, let's go hybrid and let's share ideas and let's move forward. That's the most positive message I can have today for you. Thank you very much for attending, everybody. Thank you for all the panelists, all the helpers in the background, David especially for instigating and running the meeting. And I officially close this meeting and await further questions.
Thanks, Nick.
I'm happy to stay on. I'm happy to stay on and answer any more questions if anyone has. I did see one question which I would actually like to respond to if I can find it again.
I can give you some other questions that came up.
Please.
Okay, how are the people on the site able to see those who are remote? And I know you've said this, but it still comes up as personal questions.
Okay, very simply, you have a camera at the back of the room which shows the speaker. You have a camera at the front of the room which shows the audience. Both of those are go into Zoom as 2 separate attendees, if you like, at the Zoom meeting.
If the question was how do the people on site see those online?
Apologies. You have either a computer, a TV screen, which is the best usually, or you project from a projector. And most clubs have access to a projector or a TV screen. If they don't, then they're not really giving their members a proper experience.
Okay, and this is from Joanne Callahan, who is still on the line. She has a condenser lapel microphone with a 3-meter cable. It's great for sound, however, they're worried it's on a wire, and if the speaker wants to move beyond the 3 meters from the mic, can you comment?
Well, obviously, a cable is going to be a health and safety issue, so I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
The short version is, yes, the cables are an issue. So wireless microphones are much better for that sort of thing. There are options. One of them is the Rode, which we saw earlier. And as I say, I love that microphone. And the beauty of it is because it's so small, it can be wiped with a antibacterial wipe before being handed over.
Yeah.
And what was that microphone type that you guys mentioned?
The particular one that Moira mentioned in her slides was the Rode Go. It's a beautiful clip-on microphone. But there are other options. There is a less than $20 Bluetooth option, which you can pick up from eBay, which basically it's one that clips on over the ears, and it's got a microphone that comes out in front of the mouth, and it has a Bluetooth connection which you just plug into your laptop. Now, it's not perfect, but it works. And a club can buy one of those for around $15 on eBay, which is a cheaper option if you wish to go that way.
Okay, so here's one for our technical individuals, and we actually touched upon it, Graham. You did touch on this. From a technical standpoint, isn't the very foundational consideration to have access to Wi-Fi with enough speed and bandwidth to support the video audio volume? How do they test this, and what is the minimum that they should expect?
I can probably answer that fairly simply. You don't need a huge bandwidth for Zoom. If you can get 5 megabits a second, you will probably be okay. Less than that, then you might find that you're getting poor reception or poor transmission. But on mobile, in cities certainly, you can get nowadays, 50, 100, 150 megabits a second. Certainly anywhere you get 4G. So it's only going to be an issue for clubs that are maybe in outlying districts where there isn't a good broadband.
Okay.
If I can, your mobile phone should be enough. I know that when I'm traveling around the US in resorts and things like that, I use my mobile phone as a hotspot for my online club meetings, like online presenters, and yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so there's a question about mixers going on here. With the multiple audio and video sources, would a mixer be helpful rather than multiple accounts?
Yes, indeed. A mixer would be very helpful. However, you do have the issue that Zoom cannot auto noise cancel if you have anything between the microphone and the computer. I'm using a mixer here. If I turn my speaker up, you're going to get horrible feedback coming through. Can you hear it? That's because I'm going through a mixer here. So it is something you have to be very aware of. So in that circumstance, even if you have sound going into a TV, you probably need to get your sound well away from the microphone.
Are there any mixers you'd recommend?
Yes, and I have one mixer which is quite cheap. It's still around about 150 pounds sterling. The one I have here is 650. It's obviously a lot more expensive, but it's an all singing, all dancing machine. You can get cheaper, but you get what you pay for. My 150 pound one, which I have retired now, and I will probably be giving to my club, you get a bit of noise coming over on the microphones. On this machine I have here, you can hear the quality of the audio, I hope. Yeah.
Well, I do have a question for you, Moira, because your sound is like phenomenal. What are you using right now?
I'm using another Rode microphone. It's called a Rode Procaster. If I switch my background off, you'll be able to see it. Just bear with me.
How do you spell that? Rode what?
It's a Rode Procaster. Here it is.
Wow, very nice.
It's a professional broadcast microphone. It's not the top one. It's one below the top broadcast microphones of 6 years ago, and this is quite an old microphone now. but it is excellent quality.
The Rode by the Procaster is in fact what I use to run my voiceover business from home.
Well, there you are.
And are you wired directly into it with the headphones?
Well, no, because I'm going through a mixer.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so everything goes through my mixer. My computer is wired into the mixer via USB, so I can play you things off my computer through the mixer. I could even, I mean, if I switch my radio on, I can actually play my radio out through the mixer. I do everything through there. I can also Bluetooth my phone into the mixer, so I could have a Bluetooth connection there as well. So,
all right. So
all singing, as I say, all singing, all dancing.
All right. So, David, this might be for you and Nick. Will all of these things that are happening require the club members to receive technical training? And then have we thought about providing technical quality training for people? Like, I mean, step-by-steps where we're going through it to work with people to provide the technical aspect.
Answer to that is yes. We will be holding webinars over the next few months on exactly that question. I'm heading a hybrid club tech team, and we will be discussing that in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully arranging for some training sessions to go online.
Yeah, so Lois, in District 71, we set up a tech team, myself, Moira, and Omani. And what we did was we delivered the contest to the district. We also delivered the TLI over the last few weeks. And one of the things that we've just created is 4 projects, one of which is the hybrid element, and Moira is heading that up. And we are going to be collecting people and information and creating I suppose a best practice or some sort of solution. It's up to the team what they can get done, and we're very proactive on that. And I'm so glad that we've got members of my district over here as well. But that's, you know, anybody can get that together. Online presenters can do that with, for example, today's an excellent first, you know, kickoff for that. David, you must have ideas on this.
I guess my answer is, as far as District 47, where Lois and I are both active in South Florida and the Bahamas, we tried to promote this session. This is our first stab at it, and we'll figure out from there if more is required. But I'd encourage District 47 people who didn't make this session to watch the replay, because everybody's going to have to come up with a slightly different solution. Everybody has a slightly different room setup. And if you are a corporate club that has a meeting room that's set up for video conferencing, or you're going to a university that's set up for remote teaching, you may have little or no issue at all. But most of us are hauling our own equipment into whatever meeting space we're going to. That's where the issues come in.
I'd like to make a comment about what somebody's put in the chat. The Audio-Technica ATR 2100 is also a very good microphone and highly recommended. I'm guessing that is a shotgun microphone. Is that correct, Kelvin? Is Kelvin still here? You're muted, Kelvin.
Yeah, I'm still here. No, it's not a shotgun. It's not a shotgun mic. This one here.
Okay, it's a handheld then. Yeah,
it's a handheld,
and it's wired. So you have the issue of wired. You have the issue in COVID that it's going to be handled a lot. You know, so it's not ideal.
Yeah, my thought actually, what I saw in my head was the microphone on a microphone stand, not necessarily touched by the speaker, but that is a good point.
Okay, but then you're tying your speaker to that one spot, so they can't move around, because that is very much it's an excellent microphone, and good quality, but it has to be close to the face.
Yeah, you're right, and this is not wireless, correct?
I would like to make a comment on that, just in general, people, which is we should remember that outside of Toastmasters, there will be a variety of tying to microphones and whatever, and therefore, while it's always nice to have the best and ideal in every situation, since I at least am training myself for various real world which Toastmasters isn't, real world situations, the statement, gee, you're limited by the 3 meters of mic wire. I've been at lecterns where the thing is set at the lectern, and if I want to walk to the side of the lectern, I have a problem. And I have to know how to handle that too. So I am not too concerned about the fact it's not going to be perfect. Life isn't perfect.
So one could comment on wireless as well, because I ordered one that was a clip-on and I sent it back, because when you order them, make sure that they don't require an app to work, because there are a couple of brands out there where you have to download an app and then the microphone will go through that app. The problem is then it doesn't communicate with other platforms such as Zoom, such as Facebook. So to me, it was useless to only record things. Yeah, if I were doing a video from my iPhone, it was great, but that's really the only thing that it was good for. So I ended up sending it back. Thank you, Amazon.
Good point.
Okay. Is Rick Durling still on the line here?
Just a follow-up question.
Okay, so Rick had a question. Does the Rode Wireless Go Premium Pack Lavalier setup connect to the laptop via a USB, or is there other gear needed to connect it?
Okay, I can answer that. First of all, don't go for the premium or singing or dancing pack. Go for just the basic. And this is the bit that plugs into the laptop.
We can't see it. Okay.
Okay, let me turn my background off. Okay, right. So here we are. It's plugged in via a normal TRS plug. It's the normal stereo plug. Now, if you have to go into a laptop which has a single connection for input and output audio, then you need to get a different cable, but the cables are very easily acquired. There's no difficulty. It just has a 3 connections on the end rather than the 2 connections that this one has. And that plugs directly into your laptop. Now I actually have it here with an adapter that I can plug into a camera, and I also have an adapter I can plug into my phone, because I have an iPhone.
If I can interrupt for a second. I'm sorry.
I was going to say the short version is that it doesn't use Bluetooth, which I think might have been part of the question. So if you have other Bluetooth devices, it won't be interfering.
Yeah, it's wireless.
Okay. I saw Sunny Fridge in the group, and I know she had some experience in this department. So I just like to ask her to take a moment to maybe tell us how her experience compares.
Hello, everyone. Actually, I was just typing in the chat, not sure what I was going to share, but I will tell you, when I was a club coach for Central Mississippi Advancing Toastmasters, I hyped the club up and I said one of the ways we were going to get more members is we were going to go hybrid, and I believed it. And so when I also became president last July, we did online attendance. Because I have a television production background, it was easier. But the challenge was, because I had the computer, the laptop, I had cameras. I mean, I could use them, but if I didn't bring them, things couldn't happen. But I was going to mention that I did have some luck with this Hey mic, and some people may not be able to use it, but I was able to use it. I was able to use it for Zoom. And this, when you put this on, you could go away from your phone or your iPad and our laptop for up to 65 feet. I didn't test it 65, but I tested it 40, and it worked. What we did is we just put a pencil on here and we left it at the podium or the lectern, and everyone had to kind of get trained to, if they were speaking, they had to go to the lectern so that they could be heard for the people online could hear them. And so that was a workaround. It was not the best situation, but we worked with what we had. And our biggest challenge was audio, because the building I was in had great Wi-Fi, and they gave us their private Wi-Fi that they used. If I was to do it again, I'd do like I do now. I use Ethernet. And I'm about to experiment with Stream Deck. And Stream Deck is an apparatus. a little bit far from me at the moment, but you can plug in extra cameras, and then you can kind of sort of switch from camera to camera. I'm going to try it at home with my next online meeting to see whether or not it's a good experience. And I'll get back to you on that. I do know some people do use Stream Deck, and you can have more than one camera. And then there's something called, I wouldn't advise buying it, ATEM. It's also a switcher, but that's when you're doing big productions. We don't have big budgets, most of us. So we just have to make the best that we can do. So I would just suggest maybe getting one of these cameras, if you could get a second camera, or use your iPhone or iPad as a second camera, and perhaps that would be on the audience, and then the other one would be at the podium. It's a possibility. It's what everyone said. You have to experiment a little bit and then listen to some of you who already have done it, so we can come up with best practices. So I'd love to work with you a little bit more to help my club get better.
Thanks, Sonny.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. I think we are getting pretty close. I'm just looking to see if these participants are still on.
I think Sean had a question.
Sean?
No.
I think I answered in direct.
Okay. All right.
It was about battery life on the Rode Wireless Go, and it's advertised at 7 hours. Now, I haven't done it to destruction as yet, because I'm normally doing it for relatively short times, but it's well over the time for a Toastmasters meeting.
Okay. Well,
Folks, I'm going to have to pull the pin because work awaits, but thank you for everybody's contributions today.
And that also takes care of the questions that I had listed. Thank you.
Okay.
That took an extra 20 minutes. Appreciate
All right, well, I think we can wrap. Yep.
Thank you, everyone. This is really
Nick,
good.
do you want to close out anything?
Come over to the Cayman Islands for a meeting whenever you can.
Yeah, but are we looking for a place to come on holiday? I'll talk to you offline, okay?
Sure, no problem. A few recommendations, no problem. We open up back to the public in September.
All right, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll give you my address. So just send me a couple of tickets. It'll be fine.
Sure, we could work that out.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All right, thanks to everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right.
Especially those
Signing
who-
off.
Middle of the night.
Bye. Thank you.